What if I told you that some of the most damaging control tactics don't sound aggressive at all? They don't come with yelling. They don't come with obvious threats. Sometimes they come wrapped in concern. Sometimes they come disguised as love. And sometimes they come in the form of a simple sentence that leaves you questioning yourself for hours. Today, we're diving into emotional manipulators, how they operate, why they do what they do, and the specific types of phrases they use to pull you into fear, guilt, and shame. Because once you can hear it clearly, you can't unhear it. And that awareness changes everything. Emotional manipulation at its core is about control. No matter the personality type, whether it's someone overtly toxic or someone subtly unhealthy, the common thread is dominance. The desire to influence your behavior, your emotions, your decisions, not through honest communication, but through psychological pressure. Control gives them relief. It gives them validation. It gives them a temporary sense of power. And often, underneath that need for control is deep insecurity. Many manipulators were raised in environments where they felt powerless, chaotic, or unseen. Instead of learning emotional regulation, self-worth, and accountability, they learned survival strategies. As adults, those survival strategies show up as control tactics. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most manipulators don't wake up thinking, "I'm going to manipulate someone today." Many lack self-awareness. They don't examine their behavior. They don't question their motives. Their ego protects them from self-reflection. And that ego tells them they're right, they're justified, and they're entitled to get what they want. Now, before we break down the phrases, you need to understand something important. Manipulation is rarely just one sentence. It's a pattern. It's layered. It's repeated. It's tested and adjusted. A manipulator studies you, your fears, your insecurities, your attachment wounds, and then chooses the tactic that works best. Generally, these tactics fall into three emotional triggers: guilt, fear, and shame. Let's start with guilt. When someone uses guilt to control you, they position themselves as the victim. They make you feel responsible for their emotional state. You might hear phrases like, "I can't believe you do this to me," or "after everything I've done for you," or "you've really hurt me," on the surface. These statements sound vulnerable, but pay attention to the tone and timing. If you set a boundary and suddenly they're wounded, devastated, or deeply disappointed, that's not vulnerability, it's pressure. The goal is to make you feel like your healthy decision is an act of betrayal. You may also hear, "You've changed," or "You're not the person you used to be." Translation: you're no longer as easy to control. Another guilt-based tactic is exaggeration. "You always do this. You never think about anyone but yourself." Extreme language creates emotional overwhelm. Instead of discussing one issue, you're now defending your entire character. Once guilt hooks you, it doesn't take much more. A few repeated reminders of how much they're suffering. A few subtle comments about your selfishness, and slowly, you start adjusting your behavior, not because you want to, but because you feel obligated. Now let's talk about fear. Fear-based manipulation often shows up when someone knows you're emotionally attached to them. They understand their importance in your life, and they use it. You might hear, "If you don't do this, maybe we shouldn't be together," or "Fine, I just won't help you next time," or even silence withdrawal used as punishment. Threats don't always sound dramatic. Sometimes they're subtle. "I guess I'll remember this." That sentence may sound harmless, but it implies future consequences. Fear manipulators often mix in criticism. Small jabs at your competence. Comments that make you question your ability to function without them. "You'd never manage on your own." "No one else would put up with you." These statements are not random, they're strategic. If you doubt yourself, you cling tighter. And here's where codependency plays a role. If you rely heavily on someone else for validation, emotional stability, or identity, fear tactics work faster. When you believe someone else is responsible for most of your emotional fulfillment, the idea of losing them feels catastrophic. That's why strengthening self-worth is the antidote. When you can meet more of your own emotional needs, threats lose power. Now let's move into shame. Shame is one of the most powerful control tools because it targets identity. While guilt says, "You did something bad," shame says, "You are something bad." A manipulator who uses shame pays attention to your insecurities. Your weight, your career, your sensitivity, your past mistakes. The areas where you've reacted strongly before. If they notice you're insecure about something, they'll revisit it. Maybe directly, maybe subtly. "Are you sure you should be eating that? You're too sensitive. Why can't you be more like your sister?" Comparisons are a classic shame tactic. Shame also shows up when you try to grow. Imagine telling someone you want to see a therapist, start self-development, or pursue a new goal. Instead of encouragement, you hear, "You're overreacting." That's unnecessary. You just need to toughen up. Healthy people support growth, even if they don't fully understand it. Toxic individuals feel threatened by it. Because growth reduces control. Here's something critical. Manipulators don't use every tactic. They use the ones that work on you. If guilt doesn't affect you, they'll try fear. If fear doesn't work, they'll try shame. And once they find your weak spot, they return to it consistently. You might also notice patterns like the silent treatment or passive-aggressive comments masked as jokes. Relax, I was just kidding. If it hurts and they dismiss it, that's data. Listen to that. One of the most important skills you can develop is slowing down in conversations. Instead of immediately defending yourself or explaining, pause and ask internally, what are they trying to make me feel right now? Guilt? Fear? Shame? That question alone creates distance, and distance creates clarity. Manipulation thrives in emotional chaos. It weakens in awareness. Another red flag is when someone cannot tolerate feedback. If you calmly express how their behavior affects you and they respond with anger, deflection, or victimhood, that's ego protection. Healthy individuals can hear discomfort without collapsing or attacking. And remember, not all unhealthy behavior is intentional cruelty, but impact matters more than intent. If someone repeatedly makes you feel small, confused, or responsible for their emotional regulation, that dynamic is unhealthy regardless of their self-awareness. So what do? First, strengthen your boundaries. A boundary is not a demand. It's a decision about what you will and will not participate in. For example, if you continue speaking to me that way, I'm ending this conversation. Then follow through calmly. Second, reduce over-explaining. Manipulators feed off long justifications. Short, steady responses are harder to twist. Third, observe patterns instead of isolated moments. Anyone can say something hurtful once. Manipulation is repetition. Fourth, rebuild your relationship with yourself. If you depend on external approval for emotional stability, you become easier to control. When you learn to validate your own feelings, outside pressure loses intensity. And finally, trust your intuition. If something feels off, it usually is. You don't need courtroom-level evidence to honor your discomfort. The truth is, manipulators rely on confusion. If you're constantly second-guessing yourself, you're easier to steer. Clarity is your protection. But here's the part most people don't talk about. The most dangerous manipulation tactic isn't yelling. It isn't even obvious guilt-tripping. It's intermittent reinforcement. Moments of affection mixed with moments of control. Kindness followed by criticism. Warmth followed by withdrawal. That emotional roller coaster creates attachment. Your brain starts chasing the good moments. You begin tolerating the bad ones because you're waiting for the reward. And that cycle can keep people stuck for years. So as you reflect on your own relationships, ask yourself, are you consistently respected? Or are you consistently managing someone else's emotions? Because the next time someone says, you're too sensitive, or after all I've done for you, or maybe we should just rethink this, you'll hear it differently. And once you truly understand what's happening beneath the surface, you'll start responding differently too. But here's the real question I want you to think about until next time. If someone lost the ability to use guilt, fear, and shame on you, how would your relationship with them change?